L'Shana Tova Tikatevu, a sweet new year to everyone, and thank you to all of the beautiful laners and those who led the service for the reading from the Torah and blessed the Torah, and all of you who have contributed in so many different ways. I also want to add my thanks to Adria Benjamin and the beautiful string quartet who played Samachti on our first evening to add such gorgeous music. And each service, the 30 minutes before, our open door matter, and you can hear that string quartet and sometimes a quintet with the piano playing, and it's all music from our social justice concerts over the last 3 years that are playing the background music. And that music has sustained so much of us, and those concerts have filled our souls as we fight for social justice in the streets and in the ballot box. We get to fill our souls with things like these prayer services and gorgeous music and community, and that nourishes us and builds our Even Hashtiyah. Think about everything that nourishes you as strengthening your Even Hashtiyah, the foundation stone. We believe the foundation stone is on which the earth itself and the world is sustained, and each of us has to have an Even Hashtiyah, a foundation stone of our own, on which we imagine we are being held and bolstered and strengthened. So as you go around your world, keep thinking, how strong is my foundation stone today? What do I need to feed it, to nourish it, to strengthen it? Who do I need to give me something of great love or beauty? And sometimes it will be glorious music, sometimes it'll be a gorgeous walk in the park, sometimes it'll be a visit to an art museum or a phone call or a Zoom with a friend. So just as we move through our time, imagine we have to strengthen the foundation stone of the earth, which is strengthened by each of us strengthening our individual foundation stones. So as you imagine strengthening your own stone on which you stand and function in the world, imagine that your foundation stone is connected to everyone else's foundation stone, which is connected to the foundation stone on which the earth depends. We're told that every act we do matters. And the things that we do, which we call averot or chataim, sins or things that are missing the mark, are things that remove, that drain the holiness from the universe, that take away from the beauty and power of the world in which we have been given and lived, and God has offered to us as an opportunity for a full life. Everything we do, whether it's small or big, that drains the holiness from the universe, we call chet, or an avera, missing the mark, draining the holiness. And everything we do, every mitzvah, everything that we do that adds to the holiness of the world, that adds to the strengthening of the light, that's a mitzvah. That's contributing to the holiness. Every single day, every moment of every day, we have options. Are we draining the holiness? Are we adding to it? I believe deeply in the concept that each of us has a job to do in improving the world in which we live. The word tikkun olam has gotten bandied about so much, I fear that it's become a bit hackneyed. But the idea behind it is that each of us is a partner with the one who has created the world itself. And today we celebrate the creation of the world. We are partners with God. The world has been shattered, and along with God, we put those shards back together. And that's the tikkun, that's the repair we're taught about. But I believe that repair comes in two deep ways. One is fighting the ugliness in the world, fighting the things that are unjust, that are cruel, that are evil. And the other is equally as important, which is creating beauty. We have to do both. We have to eradicate and fight against injustice. We have to increase justice, increase beauty, increase holiness. And that's our challenge as human beings. How do we both fight against the decreasing of holiness on the one side and constantly increase holiness on the other? We're told that every single one of us has that power. As weak or as small as we feel in a given moment, we're taught famously the story of having a petek, a little piece of paper in each pocket. One piece of paper says, "For you, the world was created." Can you imagine actually believing that? The world was created for you. And in the other pocket, we have a little petek, a little piece of paper that says that you have come from dust, and to dust you will return. And depending on where you are spiritually, you need one petek or the other a little bit more. Sometimes we feel a little too strong, a little too have a grandiose sense of ourselves, and we need to be reminded, as we say in Unatana Tokef, we are each ultimately from the earth, from dust, and we will each return. We are mortal. And on the other hand, sometimes we need to be reminded, because we feel so crushed, so small, we need to remember that for you, the world itself was created. Rabbi Moskowitz, one of our clergy, our scholar in residence here at CBST, has been teaching every day for the month of Elul from Hilchot Tshuva, Rambam's classic famous text on the laws of repentance. And every year we go back to that text as the foundational text to understand the process and what it is to go through this deep and transformative process of transformation and repentance. And a couple of things that Rabbi Moskowitz taught that I found very meaningful and want to offer all of you. One is that he said we are taught to be like God, on the one hand, to imitate God, a famous concept. And what does God create on the first day of creation? In the middle of tohu vavohu, in the middle of complete chaos, the first thing that God creates is light. And from that we learn we have to imitate God. That we, when we are dafka in the middle of the worst kinds of chaos, our job is to be a creator of light. Light is the first step to reducing the chaos and creating the world as we want to see it. Can you believe that you can do that? So many of us, when we experience chaos and the chaos of the world in which we live, the chaos of the earth itself being full of hurricanes and fires and tornadoes and the terrible reaction of climate change, there's the chaos of that, the chaos of the political world in which we live today, in which the leaders and the leadership of this country, not just one person, but an entire leadership of this country is full of lies and cruelty. The chaos of our economic uncertainty in which we live, not knowing if there will be a possibility of a good job or the ability to feed our families or take care of those we love. The chaos of a health crisis in which we don't know that someone's kiss or handshake could kill us. We live in the middle of so much chaos, and so many of us feel so much despair. I take this teaching very deeply to heart. Our job in times of chaos is to create light. So if you're confused, what do I do? You have to think about what can you do to put more light into the world. You can't solve the biggest problems, perhaps, on your own, but you can put out and put forth more light in the world. The other teaching he offered, which I loved very much, was that the sense of when things are hard and difficult, and there's so much evil to confront, and our people have been the victims of terrible evil for generations of history, that it's a little bit like we're being offered the opportunity to strengthen our muscles against the resistance of the evil. Just like you strengthen your physical muscles by increasing the weights you have to lift. If you only lifted the same degree of weight, your muscles will not get stronger. If you increase the amount of weight that you have to lift, your muscles will get stronger, and so too spiritually. As our lift is harder, and as the lift itself to live each day with hopefulness and with light is harder, we're being given an opportunity to strengthen our muscles of love and of hope and of optimism and of courage. So every time it feels really hard to get out of bed and face another day, imagine this is an opportunity. You can strengthen your muscles today. In today's Parsha, we read the story of the unimaginable, of a father who loves a child, being told by God to kill his son to show his love for God. I'm going to leave aside how we feel about that. But let's kind of zoom out by 30,000 feet and focus on a father facing a child's death. A father facing a child's deep, deep suffering. We're told that Abraham takes Isaac, we heard in the reading today, up to Har Moriah. What is Har Moriah? That is the location of the Even Hashtiyah, of the foundation stone. We're taught, according to Jewish tradition, that the foundation stone itself is the stone on which that sacrifice was to take place. But what happens instead of Abraham sacrificing his son as he thought he was supposed to do in order to be a righteous person? Abraham had this profound ability to change his mind, to understand he needed to look at the world differently. That no, God wasn't asking him to sacrifice his son. And he looked up, just the way Hagar looked up yesterday in reading in the middle of her despair, and she saw water. She saw an option that she hadn't imagined existed before. Abraham looks up and sees the ram. And when Abraham sees that ram, he understands there's an option he hadn't even thought of yet. That ram, by the way, is one of the reasons we sound the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. We're hearing the sound of the shofar itself, which is a ram's horn, to remind ourselves, if we have not yet found the solution to the crisis in which we find ourselves, maybe it's because we haven't looked up enough. Maybe we haven't looked inside enough. Maybe we haven't been creative enough. Maybe we haven't thought deeply enough. Maybe we haven't considered something yet which is yet to be found. And when that thing is found, when that thought emerges, when we are not crushed by what we assumed was the way the world was constructed and are open to be creative and thoughtful and full of light, there will be solutions we couldn't have imagined. And our job is to stay hopeful, to imagine the world which is not yet in existence, to not give up or give in. Friday night, as we were in the middle of our services, word came to us that one of the heroes of our generation, one of the greatest of our generation, died. The first Jewish woman on the Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I want to offer a few thoughts about her and her life as we think about what that shofar teaches us. So much is being written and said about Justice Ginsburg. I want to offer a few words of my own and of what some others have said. First of all, how meaningful that justice was her title. That her title in the world was justice. She had in her chamber in the Supreme Court, for her career in the Supreme Court, the hanging that said, Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdof. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. Now, for those of us who feel complete despair that she has died, let's remember a little bit of who she was. First of all, she loved opera. She loved beauty in the world. She wasn't only focused on the fights she had to embody and to engage in, she also loved art. She loved music. She said, most of the time when I go to sleep, I'm thinking about legal problems. But when I go to the opera, I'm just lost in it. The one time I had an opportunity to hear Ruth Bader Ginsburg speak was at the Glimmerglass Music Festival in upstate New York. And I know some CBST members were there that year as well. For the last 9 summers, Ruth Bader Ginsburg would be at the Glimmerglass Music Festival. She was close friends of Francesca Zambello, who was the art director and music director of the festival. And every year she would give a lecture at the music festival on opera and the law. And it was a fabulous experience. Her combining with humor and genius, of course, lectures exploring legal aspects of various operas. And young opera singers would sing different arias, and she would give a whole lecture discussing and exploring different pieces of opera through the lens of her legal mind. She said that she loved the story of Fidelio. She said, I got close to what she appreciated what Beethoven wanted in this story of Leonore, who disguises herself as a man to rescue her husband from prison. She related to it as a woman and as a feminist. Francesca Zambello said in an article written about the justice, quote, we did the opera Scalia-Ginsburg at Glimmerglass about their friendship. And before Scalia died, there were many great performances when we would have opening nights in Washington, and Scalia would sit on one side of the aisle, and she sat in the other. They would be friendly and jocular and lovey-dovey at the opera, and you knew the next day they would be giving opposing opinions. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was profoundly affected by her family's experience in Eastern Europe and being the descendant of Eastern European immigrants. She understood the message and the morals and the story of the Shoah, of the Holocaust, and what it meant to be an American as a result, and for sure what it meant to be a Jew. I quote, in a piece she wrote responding to the Holocaust, we remember in sorrow that Hitler's Europe, his Holocaust kingdom, was not lawless. Indeed, it was a kingdom full of laws deployed by highly educated people, teachers, lawyers, and judges to facilitate oppression, slavery, and mass murder. We convene today to say never again, not only to Western history's most unjust regime, but also to a world in which good men and women, abroad and here in the United States, witnessed or knew of the Holocaust kingdom's crimes against humanity, and let them happen. She goes on to say about the Passover story. The Passover story we tell is replete with miracles. But unlike our ancestors in their exodus from Egypt, our way is unlikely to be advanced by miraculous occurrences. In striving to drain dry the waters of prejudice and oppression, we must rely on measures of our creation, upon the wisdom of our laws and the decency of our institutions, upon our reasoning minds and our feeling hearts, and as a constant spark to carry on, upon our vivid memories of the evils we want to banish from our world. In our long struggle for a more just world, our memories are among our most powerful resources. May the memory of those who perished remain vibrant to all who dwell in this fair land, people of every color and of every creed. May that memory strengthen our resolve to aid those at home and abroad who suffer from injustice born of ignorance and intolerance, to combat crimes that stem from racism and prejudice, and to remain ever engaged for the quest for democracy and respect for the human dignity of all the world's people. Abigail Pogrebin interviewed Ruth Bader Ginsburg for her musical, Stars of David, which we have a little bit of a connection to. It's one of my great experiences of my entire life that I got to be a lyric in a different song of that musical. That was one of the greatest accomplishments of my life. But the song that Abigail wrote, the lyrics which she said that Ruth Bader Ginsburg approved and very much enjoyed, were based on a story that Ruth Bader Ginsburg told. She grew up a very educated Jew in a very Orthodox family, and at age 17, her mother died. And when the Shiva Minyan was gathered, she was not allowed to say Mourner's Kaddish. And the song, which has music by Tom Kitt, lyrics by Abigail Pogrebin, the lyrics are as followed, in Ruth's words. I'm 17 and Mama's ill. People whisper around her and I expect to be brave. I'll try, I say. The day before my graduation, I watched my mother die. We gathered in the living room, relatives and neighbors. I expected to stand up and chant the prayer, but women were forbidden, which felt so unfair. Count me in the minyan. Yes, I know the law. 10 men, 10 men. Please don't explain that to me again. She's been my closest friend since I was born. And now, Daddy, I just need to mourn. Please let me stand next to you. Let me say the prayer. But laws can't be broken. They prayed without me, as if I wasn't there. My mother nudged me every day. Ruth, you're smart. Keep reading. Not many girls knew Kaddish. I was one of the few. But the faith that I was born with didn't care what I knew. A daughter's voice is quiet. At the moment it should be heard. Yiskadal v'yiskadash shemei rabbah. I have tried my life to be the person whom my mother saw. The person whom my mother saw. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's legal accomplishments are well known and will be discussed in the days to come in great number. That when she graduated the top of her law class among very few women, she was unable to get a law job. She continued to fight for the right to work as a lawyer and then to fight for the right to change law when she saw them to be unfair, unjust. Can you imagine if she had said then, I give up, or I give in, or it's too hard, the lift is too heavy, I don't have the muscles for it? She was asked about her reaction to the Supreme Court and the fact that her opinions were often in the minority in recent days. I'm dejected, she said, but only momentarily when I can't get the fifth vote for something that I think is very important. But then you go on to the next challenge and you give it your all. You know that these important issues aren't going to go away. They're going to come back again and again and again. There will be another time, another day. Ginsburg urged all of us to fight for the things that we care about. And millions of us have heard her in her lifetime. She became an icon, as we all know. But she always said, try and get people to agree with you, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. Ruth Bader Ginsburg understood the power of being in a minority, whether it was a political minority, a legal minority, or as a Jew. She would often write dissents that have become epic and have become so well known and quoted all over the place. But how did she understand that position, that dissent? She wrote, dissents speak to the future. Dissents speak to the future. It's not simply enough to say, my colleagues are wrong and I would do it this way. But the greatest dissents do become court opinions, and gradually over time, their views become the dominant view. So that's the dissenter's hope, that they are writing not for today, but for tomorrow. We, in her memory, must not give up or give in. We must learn from her. We must understand that our job is not to see an impact this minute or this day. And right now I want to speak to all those who are American-born, who are in the congregation today, because we American-born people, whatever our backgrounds, typically have a deep flaw that those who are not American-born, who are immigrants or don't live in this country, don't share. We want Hollywood. We want a Hollywood ending. We want a Hollywood movie that's 2 hours long at the longest, and by the end of the story, everything's wrapped up in a neat little bow. We want fast food. We want fast gratification. We want fast solutions to very difficult problems. I know that many of you who are in the congregation today who are not American-born, and maybe even some of you who are American-born, don't share that, but it is an American disease. We want stuff quick. We want satisfaction fast. It doesn't happen that way. I hate to be the one to tell us all and to remind us. In Ruth Bader Ginsburg's memory, our job is to remember what the shofar itself was teaching us in the time of Abraham. It takes hard work to look around, to do the long-term fight for the right thing, to find solutions that are not necessarily obvious at first, to be encouraged because of the things we can accomplish, which doesn't mean we can accomplish everything. No one can do everything, but everyone can do something. I know these times are very tough, and people feel so much fear and anxiety and a sense of despair. Think about the people who are our heroes, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We only have changed the laws in this country to the degree we have because she didn't give up when she could have. Our job is to continue in that way. If we want to honor her memory, we have to keep up the fight. And we have to love art. We have to create space for beauty. We have to appreciate whatever it is that gives you a sense of the holiness of the world, whether it's opera or bluegrass music or art museums or walks in Riverside Park or a cup of delicious tea. Our job is to fight the ugly and the evil and to create beauty also. I'm so proud and deeply moved of this community who understands that our job is to create culture, to create art, to create beauty, no matter how bad it gets, and to be in the streets, at the ballot box, and doing everything we can to change things.